I swear on my life, I could sit on Paulie's shoulders at night and I would beat Christopher Lovejoy.
When I look back at the video, Amir actually did wind up with a hand on his neck. It wasn't from me, though.
Just like when I told everybody Joe will beat Daniel Dubois, I'm telling you, he will go through Alexander Usyk.
Yes, people, I am Savage Dan.
I'm Paulie Malignaggi.
You are watching Mouthpiece, the official boxer podcast. Welcome back to Mouthpiece. I am Savage Dan.
I'm Paulie Malignaggi, the Magic Man.
As always, remember to like, comment, subscribe. And this week, we had somebody in the comments playing matchmaker, of course. And this was the comment. It said, Paulie and Floyd Mayweather should fight now. The way I see it, it's a win-win. Mayweather fights right now. Wait for it. It's not even done. Mayweather fights an actual boxer or fighter, drawing in hardcore boxing fans and the casuals. Both Paulie and Floyd aren't necessarily known for being heavy-handed boxers, so we should get a fight with all the makings of the sweet science, given that they're both cerebral fighters. Also, less risk to the health of either fighter. Big payday for each. Take my money. What do you think?
I think
Fancy it?
I think it's a pure boxing fans fight, but I don't have the popularity of the Paul brothers, so I don't.
It's true.
I think we need. I think for those kind of things to happen, you have to have the popularity of the Paul brothers to get Floyd to.
You could just run around and I don't know, throw wet tissue at people. You know that's how you build a fight now. Just do weird things, and all of a sudden you got yourself a fight. Anyway, from one man in the comments trying to make fantasy fights to another that is really making fights, we give you the first ever guest on a new format, Mr. Sam Jones. Sam, thanks for coming. Nice to have you. You're the first guest that's been back, albeit it's on a new format. But how are things at the moment? Busy?
Yeah, all good, mate. All good. Can't complain.
All right. So we've obviously seen this weekend's boxing, and we had Billy-Joe Saunders against Canelo Alvarez, which ended rather abruptly. Obviously, it seems like Billy Joe had a broken orbital bone. What did you make of the fight as a whole?
I thought it was a good fight. I didn't think it was a great fight. I thought Billy Joe did what he was the only way possible for him to win this fight. Like, it's no secret that Canelo's got the best, I would say, the best chin, maybe apart from Joe Joyce, but he's definitely got one of the best chins in boxing. So he was never going to win by knockout. So he had to kind of be elusive. It was just hard to kind of make a dent on Canelo. And I think Canelo just found the body very, very quickly. I was impressed with how quickly he got into range. And the fight just ended how it ended. I think it was, I remember watching one of Paulie's fights against Miguel Cotto. You never got no easy world title fights, did you, Paulie? You had nothing easy. His first world title fight against Miguel Cotto, I remember watching that fight live. And you kind of see with the orbital bones, it kind of shows like straight away. And say like what happened with Paulie, you kind of saw that there was something wrong with it. But like Paulie's was like an extreme fracture, like came out like that. But Billy's, you kind of saw his face kind of not dented, but like
caved in a bit.
Caved in, yeah. So it's a bad injury. I mean, Paulie's the best qualified to tell you about that injury, but Mark Tibbs did the right thing and pulled his man out. It's health before wealth.
Yeah.
Paulie, I guess the floor is yours. Yeah.
You know, first off, I think Billy Joe, had he stayed in the fight, he would have had the kind of swelling that I had. You know, he probably had it later in the night. I would assume. You know. He had a real blackening of the eye as well, and you could see that there was structural damage. So I would go as far as to say he would have definitely had the same kind of swelling I had, but he probably still had that kind of swelling as his night went on in the hospital. Obviously, that's the thing about fighting. But the fans kind of go to sleep or they go out, and the fighters have to deal with the trauma of the fight when it comes to these kind of injuries. So I would think that Billy Joe probably was dealing with all this. As for the fight, I agree with Sam in that Billy Joe had to fight in the way he was fighting. But I do think I've seen Billy Joe be sharper. I do think Billy Joe was a little bit you know, and I think it's natural when you've never fought in front of a crowd this big, a monster crowd that's loud and boisterous and vociferous and against you, can be a little bit unnerving, and you've got to kind of settle into the fight. And if you're a timing fighter, that little bit of tightness can cost you, because it's going to disrupt your own timing in the way you're throwing your shots. And I saw Billy-Joe from early in the fight coming up a little short in his shots, not finding his correct distance. He was finding it at times, and even obviously won a few rounds. But I never found Billy-Joe to be totally settled into the fight. He was undershooting a little bit and coming up short, and ultimately it was because of the undershooting that eventually he got hit with that counter that broke his orbital bone. But I remember there was several different times where Canelo did the same thing. He basically double jabbed at Billy-Joe, drove Billy-Joe to the ropes, and then loaded up a big body shot. And Billy-Joe blocked it every time. The thing about it is, when you're loose enough and when you're a slick counterpuncher like Billy-Joe, at a certain point, if you're loose enough, if you're not tight, you're seeing the same thing over and over. You're going to probably keep catching that body shot, but even as you get backed up on the double jab, you know that body shot's coming. And Billy-Joe knew it was coming because he was prepared to block it every time. But at a certain point, you're ready to catch and shoot off of it, you know, because you know it's coming. Like the moment, you can tell from Canelo's momentum when he's throwing his first jab that he's going to throw a second when he's, you know, it's the kind of jab he's throwing. He's looking to back you up. So you already know from the first jab that's coming as you're backing up that it's going to end with another jab and then a big body shot, uppercut type of shot, you know. And I think I was really a little bit disappointed in the way Billy-Joe didn't catch on to it, because it's just a little quick fire, you know. It's like a trigger, like it just touch you and shoot it. If you get Canelo with a couple of those counter uppercuts, your momentum's going back. It's not going to be a big shot, but what it's going to do is it's going to make him hesitate to use that same kind of maneuver again, because now he's seeing a counter in between it, you know. And I never saw and Billy-Joe's capable of all this. He's a quality world-class fighter, but I just think that these were little signs and little hints and clues that he never really got settled into the fight. He was a little bit tight because of the entire atmosphere, and it's completely natural. People are going to say, oh, well, he's a veteran. Trust me, it's completely natural. I've been there in these kind of situations, not in front of 70,000 people, but I've fought in front of 57,000 in Manchester City Stadium, Etihad, and other places, and I've even been in front of terrible one-sided crowds against me. So it can be unnerving, and to settle into the fight can take you sometimes a round or two. And sometimes you never really get settled into it that way. And though Billy-Joe won some rounds, I never felt we got the best Billy-Joe Saunders on Saturday night. I felt like there's more Billy-Joe Saunders can give in a fight against Canelo Alvarez when you put both their styles together. And I didn't see the Billy-Joe Saunders that I know he's capable of. And that's obviously, some of it is a testament to Canelo, but I think more of it, because Canelo's not really that busy of a fighter, more of it was the entire atmosphere playing into the hands of Canelo and against Billy-Joe.
It's a testament to Canelo. I guess a question worth asking is, we know that fight was going to be pretty competitive, but we all expected Canelo to win. Didn't know how he'd win it, and he obviously stopped him in kind of destructive style. But is there anyone, Sam, that you're thinking anywhere between maybe 160 and 175 that definitely beats Canelo?
I think the only thing to beat Canelo now, I had Golovkin beating him twice. Yeah. I mean, that's just my opinion. I think the first fight I think Golovkin beat him clearly in the first fight. I had that the second fight, the judges weren't scoring jabs, so they obviously didn't think jabs were scoring shots in that particular fight. I think I had him beat him twice, so he is beatable, Canelo. He's not invincible, but the last few fights he's looked tremendous. You know what I mean? He has looked tremendous, Canelo. Yildirim, we won't count that one because Yildirim just no. But yeah, you're gonna have to start kind of building a fighter to kind of beat him. I mean, Mayweather beat him, but Canelo was young and he was at a much lower weight. But the only thing I could see potentially beating Canelo is if he went back up to light heavyweight again and just size beat Canelo alone, because I think the version of Kovalev that he beat a few years ago, Kovalev would have given him a lot more problems. I thought Kovalev was shot to bits when he fought him that time, but he's looking very, very good at the moment, Canelo. I wouldn't say invincible, but I would say close to it. Close to it at the moment. And as I say, against Billy-Joe, like you saw when he got him, when he saw that he had hurt him, hurt his eye, he was revving the crowd. He was a spiteful bastard. Do you know what I mean? Like he really was. Like he was spiteful. Like he was. He knew he'd hurt him, and he got the crowd behind him. And yeah, unless there's a, I mean, Andrade kind of goes missing in like even against Liam Williams, he went missing. I think Andrade can cause him real problems for 4 or 5 rounds, but then Canelo figure him out and then end up stopping him. So not right now. Maybe towards the latter stages of Canelo, if he stays on, and because I think he just loves to fight, doesn't he, Canelo? He's a proper gym rat. So yeah. I'm told he's in the gym, he lives the life, and he loves beating people up. So until he gets like old and he stays in and probably has that one too many, like it's like I'm not being disrespectful to Sam Eggington, but when Sam Eggington fought Paulie a few years ago, I will use Paulie as an example. Paulie would have, not being disrespectful with Sam, Eggington wouldn't have landed a glove on Paulie 10 years ago, and I'm serious on that. He wouldn't have landed one shot. So you can have that one too many, and that's probably what will beat Canelo eventually. But until then, I can't see anybody beating him, because I think Golovkin's nearly 40 years old now, and I think he's not gonna be getting better now. He's going to be on the slide. Canelo's bang in his prime.
Yeah, I kind of see where you're going with that, Sam. And I had Golovkin winning both fights as well. I can see Canelo giving Golovkin a third fight just to kind of try to say, well, I'm going to close the chapter, and he probably stops Golovkin, but an old Golovkin by that point. It's kind of the situation you're talking about in Canelo, where it'll be one too many for Golovkin by that point, and he'll probably stop him, and people will unjustly forget the first 2 fights. As far as the Andrade comparison, I actually used to think Andrade would beat Canelo, but I think based on the recent Andrade I've seen and the recent Canelo I've seen, I've probably changed my mind. I still, however, do not agree with the treatment of Andrade in the post-fight press conference. Personally, it was very obvious and clear Andrade was probably told not to cause a stir in the post-fight press conference by his promoter or somebody. I'm going to go out on a whim and say he probably was told by Eddie, because he was very, very respectful in the way he was calling out Canelo. I would have not done that, and I'm sure Andrade probably didn't want to be that respectful. Andrade, I'm sure, and despite the fact that he was respectful, Canelo was like saying, you don't beat nobody, you don't fight nobody. Bro, Rocky Fielding fought somebody? Yavni Yildirim beat somebody? I mean, if you're going to count that as your criteria, you then can't go and fight as recently as 3 months ago, Avni Yildirim. I'm sorry, if that's your criteria. So, and the funny thing is, at this point, based on their recent performances, I think Canelo beats Andrade. Early, as little as a year or two ago, I would not have picked him to beat Andrade. But based on that, it's like you said, Sam, he goes missing. He goes missing in several fights. And I thought Liam Williams actually hurt him in the fight with a good right hand. So I see there, and I wouldn't take the Andrade fight as somebody that can beat Canelo, but I would like to see Andrade get his opportunity, because well, maybe I'm a little biased. I know him since he's a teenager, and he's always been ultra talented, and he's been severely underappreciated in his whole career. But at this point, I think Canelo would beat him. Canelo's like, oh, you want to pay that? I mean, doesn't everybody want to pay that, right? Do
you remember, Paulie? Remember when you were sat at a press conference here? You had just won the WBA title, but I think you beat Senchenko, right? Yeah. And Keith Thurman was coming up. Nobody knew who the hell Keith Thurman was, and he was like, Paulie this, and you were like, now everyone's talking about me in your press conference. I remember you saying that to him, and it's a similar kind of thing. It's
funny because Keith at that time didn't understand it, but years later, he actually was telling me, he understood it now, especially when Errol Spence started coming up the ladder and doing that to him, So he's like, wow, correct. I didn't understand it at that time, but now I understand what you were talking about. And so it kind of works that way, but with Andrade, he's been around the whole time. I mean, it's not like he's just the new guy on the scene. So if you're choosing to fight Avni and you're choosing to fight Rocky Fielding, you can probably give Demetrius a chance if he's that bad. I mean, you're talking about he's talking about him like he's the rug you walk on. If he's that bad, he can't be worse than Avni Yildirim. I'm sorry, no, you can't pick me a worse opponent than Avni Yildirim, and you fought him in a stadium. So obviously it has nothing to do with the opponent's style, how known the opponent is, how boring the opponent is. It has nothing to do with that, because Canelo on his own will sell the entire stadium. So it has nothing to do with that. He's legitimately making excuses. Now you're going to tell me, oh, Yildirim was a mandatory. Since when do mandatories matter to a guy like Canelo? Since when?
Can do what he wants.
Because if you're talking about mandatories, Jamal Charlo was a mandatory for over a year. Okay, and they never fought Jamal Charlo. And that was going to lead into my next point. My guy to beat Canelo, and again, this is not a disrespect to Canelo. I think he's an excellent fighter. As a matter of fact, I think this is the only guy that beats Canelo, aside from maybe if he goes up to light heavyweight and now you're talking outside that guy's weight class, maybe somebody knocks him out. But you're talking about somebody his size. My guy that beats him at his size is Jamal Charlo. Jamal Charlo beats Canelo Alvarez. I will put that out there, and that's my total prediction right now. Right now, Jamal Charlo right now, Canelo right now beats him. A year ago, I would have picked Andre too. I do not pick Andre to beat Canelo right now.
Does he fight him though, Paulie? Will he fight him?
So. No, he won't fight him. That's the problem. That's the problem. Now there's different weight classes. Now you have even more excuses. Before you just made the what'd you make, the world champion and the franchise or whatever they call it now, legacy, whatever. I don't even know what they call these things anymore. You just made them two different champions, and then you avoided the mandatory from happening. So. Yeah. I don't know, man, but Jamal is the guy to beat Canelo right now. I think Jamal is the guy to beat Canelo even a year ago. Right now, I think only Jamal beats him at that is around his weight. If you start going to light heavyweight and taking me guys like Beterbiev, Beterbiev's the kind of guy who hits you with one shot and you go to sleep for a week, So I'm not even gonna count that because Canelo's not really a light heavyweight. He just goes up to that
Caleb Plant. I don't believe he's got the style to beat Canelo.
I think Caleb's quality.
Like Caleb.
I think Caleb's quality. Well. Yeah, I think Caleb's quality, but you need a legitimate, real quality, extra quality guy. Caleb is a good fighter, and you know what? Let's face it, we don't watch it. It's a unification type of fight. Both guys would have a chance to unify. Why not, right? But as skilled as I think Caleb is, he's also never been in the situation that Billy Joe was in on Saturday night, which is that huge stadium, huge atmosphere, raw, raucous. I'm telling you, it is. When you go into that, I don't care how many world-class fighters you fought, when you go into that and they're all against you and you've never dealt with that before, it's a bit more difficult, and you can't afford to go into a fight against Canelo when you're usually a slick, smooth fighter and be a little tight, because it will cost you. And I cost Billy-Joe Saunders.
What arena did you fight Juan Diaz in Texas?
I fought him in the Toyota Center. The Toyota Center. Yeah. The two worst atmospheres I ever fought in were Cotto in the Garden and Juan Diaz in the Toyota Center. Cotto in the Garden, the Puerto Ricans fans, they were so loud. I can remember being at Trinidad fights, and they felt like
I remember hearing it.
It felt like your ears were gonna blow out, and I remember being like, man. And then I wound up dealing with that in the Garden against Cotto too. So it was, I don't know if it's the walls, the sounds bounce off the walls, and it's just crazy, And I remember the Juan Diaz fight. They were so bad. I remember the security coming to the dressing room in the Juan Diaz fight and telling me like they just stabbed somebody in the crowd. They got to take them out. And like 3 people got stabbed in the crowd that night. And I'm like, they're all here for the same guy. I don't think anybody's getting stabbed for me. We're in this whole
they were
fighting among each other.
They were fighting each other on Saturday. They were fighting each other again on Saturday. I don't know. One too many Modelos in that crowd.
Anyway, guys, let's move on. All right. We could talk about Canelo all week, to be fair. I feel like everyone kind of has the same trailer thought. We know he's an exceptional fighter, but it seems like everyone's still just waiting for somebody to beat him. I don't know why.
Jamal Charlo beats him, Dan. Jamal Charlo beats him.
There you have it. It's Jamal Charlo. All right. We've got a big card coming up this weekend, the Matchroom card. And obviously, you have a lot of fighters on that card yourself. What are you expecting from Lerrone Richards? And obviously, you've got Solomon. Is it Dacres? I never know how to. Dacres. There you go.
Dacres.
And he's got his debut as well. What are you expecting from the night?
I'm expecting soul to deal with his opponent. A guy that's listen, he's a journeyman. He's gonna be fighting. But then we're gonna move Sol a lot faster than I've got another heavyweight that's signed to Matchroom, Johnny Fisher, who's been impressive. But I'm gonna move Sol a little bit faster. He's 27 years old. He's got lots of world-class amateur experience. So I'm gonna move him a little bit faster. Probably looking at somebody like that Sokolovsky, who David Adelaide struggled with the other week. Yep. Somebody like that, because I believe Sol will stop him. Lerrone Richards is fighting an Italian, Di Cavolo. So it's he's an experienced campaigner, and he will come to win. He will come to win, and Lerrone's going to have to be at his best to deal with him. But we believe so. I think he'll put on a boxing, give him a boxing lesson. I really do believe that.
I know Di Cavolo is from Italy. He always does come to win. You're right, Sam. I think he has a win in Germany. I think when he beat Zug.
Tough
right?
guy, man. Yeah, Tyrone Zoiga. Yeah. Tyrone Zoiga. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy. Because a lot of Italians have the problem when they leave Italy, they just come for the payday. But Di Cavolo is
this guy comes to win.
Absolutely, Di Cavolo is one of those guys that actually wherever he goes, he's looking to win, and you can tell he fights that way. You know, you got you got to beat him. He's not going to hand it to you.
100%. Like I said, we've said to Lerrone, like, and I know he's been in a lot of fights now, but he's gonna come to stick it. He's gonna stick it on Lerrone. He's not gonna come and lie down. He knows this is his last. This could be his last big hurrah. Do you know what I mean? It's a big platform. He's gonna come and stick it on Lerrone. So Lerrone's gonna have to be sharp and ready. But he's planned for it. He's sparred very well, and he's ready to go. Funnily enough, my other heavyweight, who you know, Paulie, Guido Vianello, he's gonna come and watch. He's really good friends with him. So he's like, he's really good friends with him.
It's one of those where we get torn. I used to hate watching my friends fight. It was worse. For me, it was more nerve-wracking than when I would fight if I had watched two friends fight.
Yeah, flipping heck. But it should be interesting. It's going to be a good night.
It will be.
Also on the same night, we've got Chris Lovejoy fighting Manuel Charr, and obviously Chris Lovejoy's
that fight is 17. Not going to happen.
You don't think?
I swear on my life, I could sit on Paulie's shoulders at night and I would beat Christopher Lovejoy.
How is he 17-0 with against no one? No one that we know of.
That's why you don't know. Try and find footage of him. He goes to Tijuana and he knocks out some ball.
You know who else was doing that, Sam? Adonis Creed was doing that in Creed. And look how far he got.
Yes, okay. So apart from Adonis Creed aside, I know Chris Lovejoy. Chris is my friend. I get on with him. I meet up with him in America. But I'm telling you, I don't care if he can even hear this. He can't fight. Trust me.
All right. Quickly, what is next for Joe Joyce? What's in the works for him? Obviously, he had a very, very good win against Daniel Dubois. What are you looking at next?
Usyk. We want Usyk. Usyk does not want to fight Joe because he's not going to want to fight Joe because he's mandatory for the WBO. So he's like, I can fight Joshua now for loads of money. And instead, Joshua looks as though the Fury AJ fight's getting announced this week. So that's kind of messed up Usyk's great plans to have a huge payday and fight Joshua. Instead, he's going to get a horrible grizzly bear like Joe Joyce. So
do you think that happens?
Yeah, it will. I'm certain it will happen unless Usyk decides not to fight, and then it will probably go to the WBO number 3, which is Joseph Parker, and then we'll take that fight. Take that fight any day.
If Usyk doesn't take it, though, what really is there left to do for Usyk, right? I mean, he doesn't have a lot of options.
He just don't want to fight Joe, though, Paulie. He don't want to fight Usyk's okay. Usyk, you can say he's a big name, but like nobody's going to be really in a rush to fight Usyk because of his kind of style.
Yeah, because I agree.
All this weight that he's put on. I mean, just like when I told everybody Joe will beat Daniel Dubois, I'm telling you, he will go through Alexander Usyk. He'll go through him.
Yeah, Joe's a big guy, man. You could see the size was bothering Dubois too, you know.
I know sometimes he looks uncouth, and people can say, "Oh yeah, he's slow and stuff." Listen,
he looks a bit cumbersome, but he's putting it way more together, way better as he's matured a lot more. That Dubois win was really impressive.
Yeah, impressed me also. Sam, can you give me your top 5 heavyweights right now?
Joe Joyce. No, listen. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think, out of respect, you're gonna put Fury and AJ at the top 2, And then number 3, I'm putting Joe Joyce there, and I swear I mean that. I believe he's up there. After that, I would put
Parker?
Dillian White.
Yeah.
No, not Joseph Parker. Not after that. I love Joe, my guy, but not after that last fight. He won't go 6 rounds with Joe after that last fight. No chance. What have I said? So Joe, Dillian.
Sure. So you got one spot left.
It's a tight one.
Do you still rate Deontay?
Can we get Usyk in the top 5?
Yeah. Sorry. My mistake. I will put Deontay Wilder there. You got to give Deontay. He had one night. But listen, he lost to the best heavyweight of this generation. So I would still put Deontay up there, because Deontay can beat anybody on his night with that right hand.
All right. Well, that's the 5. Sam, thanks for joining us. Any last words? Any threats? Anything that I feel like you've always got something to get off your chest?
No, I've got nothing to get off my chest.
He already told us the other guy with Lovejoy can't fight. That was to get out of his chest.
Paulie, listen to me. Yeah, I say it with a very straight face. I would sit on your shoulders and I would beat Chris Lovejoy in a fight.
That's what I'm saying. So you already got that off your chest. There's nothing else to get off your chest.
I'm telling you. I mean, what the hell is happening? I mean, him versus Manuel Charr, was it for the WBA regular?
Yeah, they've got 4 world championships there.
Oh, mate. Okay, well. I don't know. I don't know. One Manuel Charr has not fought for like 5 years.
I know.
You know what I mean?
He can't pass the drug test.
Hey, listen. Chris, if he's not fight for 5 years, you never know. Imagine Chris beats him. Oh my God, what a shambles! Get me off here before I get into trouble. Anyway.
Good to have you on. Tim.
Great to have you on. We'll speak to you soon.
Take care, guys.
See you later. Right, back to the normal format, just me and Paulie. We've talked about Canelo, Paulie, but we haven't talked about Billy-Joe. It was obviously a bad injury. Where does he go from here? There's a lot of people saying he might retire. Others are saying that he should continue. What do you think?
It's a tough injury, Dan. You know, it's a tough injury because it's one that hurts you both psychologically and physically. Because even coming back, a lot of times you have a little bit of doubts in the way you're going to come back, in your confidence in getting hit on the face again, and wondering if the healed bone will hold up. You're dealing with the psychology of your first loss. It's a damaging injury. If you look at the history of that injury, most guys don't come back the same way. Meldrick Taylor was very young when he got it against Julio Cesar Chavez. Yet, and Meldrick was able to win another world championship, but he just never reached the heights that he had reached prior to that, and even the promise that he'd shown prior to that. Daniel Dubois is still left to see where he's going to go with it, The irony is I heard that Billy-Joe was criticizing Dubois for giving up after the same injury. So that is almost karmic. It's crazy how that ends up happening. Yeah. It is a very bad injury. People have been telling me, "Oh, well, you went through it. You did all that." And I, there's a article that I tweeted out today. It was from a few years ago, and it was discussing after Kell Brook gave in after the second injury, and to his orbit bone, the opposite orbit bone that he hurt against Golovkin. And I tell people, it's not something that, it was just a certain time in my life where I was able to go through it because of, so many things going on in my life and that had happened. My life had to change no matter what. So it's crazy because boxing puts you in desperate situations. And at that time in my life, I'd probably rather have been dead anyway than have submitted, But you fast forward 5-10 years after that, I'll probably submit to you more before I let you kill me, So I think it all, being able to withstand that also is it depends on what part of your career you're in, Also, when you're younger, you're a bit more naive. I think I can say that for myself and probably for Meldrick Taylor when he was only 23 years old in the Chavez fight. I don't think you know what's going on. Like if I'm 30 years old and I get that injury and I've never had it before, I probably know my orbit bone's broken. I remember being in the Cotto fight wondering why this is swelling. Like, I'm like, I can breathe, so my nose is fine. I can open and close my mouth, so my jaw is fine. You know, a lot of people assume my jaw was broken. It was not. So I was like, this guy just hits really, really hard. I mean, it's just like, I don't think anything's broken. The orbital bone hadn't even crossed my mind. Maybe if it had, who knows? Maybe it would have played on my mind a little bit on the psychology. I knew something was wrong, but I just didn't know what. You know, I just felt that this guy just hits too hard. But I think when you're older and you've kind of settled yourself into your life, maybe even started a family for some guys, and you've got some money in the bank, you realize there's more to lose in continuing a fight like that. And coming back from that injury, especially for Billy Joe at his age, I don't know if it's worthwhile to even try. He's got some good money. He's made some very good money, and he probably made very good money in this Canelo fight. So I think if he can kind of take his life into the next phase gracefully, it will be better. Yes, you've got to deal with all the negative talk now. A lot of people are going to, negative talk him. After a loss, that always happens, especially in today's social media world. But, lions don't worry about the opinions of sheep, right? And Billy Joe has had a tremendous career, and I don't think he should be worried about all that. Obviously, it's easier said than done, but when you've got the money in the bank and you can be comfortable in these unsure times financially, I think, the best case scenario for him would be to, go out this way and not test out the injury both physically and psychologically.
We spoke about the main event. Let's talk about the undercard. Because that fight was ridiculous, and I don't even need to say what fight. I think you know what fight I'm talking about.
Yeah, that Soto Takayama fight. That actually stole the show. When you look back on the night now, that was the best fight of the night. And it was just give and take constantly. It was like these two guys were on super batteries, It's like, but that's what you get.
Relentless shots.
Yeah, usually with smaller guys, that's what you do get. They're a bit more energetic. They're smaller physically, so they have a bit better conditioning. But Takayama, at 37 years old, obviously he's had a championship career, but he took this fight on short notice. Clearly, he'd been in the gym because, you don't have that kind of conditioning if you haven't been training, even on 4 weeks' notice. And he wasn't getting the better of it. But this is a world championship fight. This is an ex-world champion who deserves the respect to be able to go out like a champion. And it's not like he wasn't responding. I mean, he didn't do a McGregor against Mayweather where you don't throw a punch for a minute and then you complain that they stopped the fight. Like Takayama was throwing constantly. He was throwing as they stopped the fight. It's. I like Lawrence Cole as a person.
Bad stoppage?
Bad stoppage. I like Lawrence Cole as a person. I think I've met him several times. Even refereed my first fight with Juan Diaz, which I also don't think he did a great job at. But as a referee, sometimes he's a bit shaky. And I'm not sure that he should be reffing this level of fights if he keeps making these kind of mistakes. He's got several different mistakes on his ledger. And again, I like him as a person, but you've got to be qualified to be on certain levels. And Cole, I have no idea why he just decided to stop it. Maybe he wanted to see the main event. I don't know. Maybe he was like, all right, I want to see the main event.
It was strange. It was strange. I mean, I've seen some people say, it was probably just looking out for the safety, which obviously they have to do. But surely you can see, whilst they're still throwing back, there's still life in them. They're still there.
And I get it. At 37, you don't want to see a 37-year-old guy taking those shots. He was definitely not getting the better of the action, but he was landing his own shots good. He was in the fight. And although you worry about health at times, you also have to respect a man's championship pedigree and the man's championship level. And Takayama has had a championship career, and he deserves to be able to be given the benefit of the doubt as a champion should.
Obviously, Kieran Conway narrowly missed out on a win. Also, Keyshawn and Kelvin Davies both go on to win on the card. Who would you say are the best brothers in the history of boxing? So obviously, there's the Klitschko brothers. There's the Charlo brothers. There's the who else are brothers? I suppose Tyson Fury and Tommy Fury.
Jake and Joe LaMotta.
Brothers. Huh?
Jake and Joey LaMotta.
Yeah, it has to be. There you go. But is there anyone else in the running that is
No, to me, the best combination of brothers that are like world class of pedigree, probably the Charlo brothers. I don't know that I've seen the Quarry brothers were good. You've had other brothers that were solid. Brother combination.
Well, what about the Klitschko's? They ruled for 10 years.
Brothers, Gabriel and Rafael Ruelas were both world champions as well when I was a kid. But to win world championships and be as dominant as the Charlos have been as brothers, I don't think you'll find a brother combination that has been able to be as solid and dominant as the Charlo brothers. I probably would.
I think I've got one.
Who do you got?
I'm gonna go with the Klitschko's.
You're right. How can I forget the Klitschko's? You're right. How can I forget the Klitschko's? You're absolutely right. Now, you know what? That's a tough one. Yeah, man. Yeah, you got to go with the Klitschko's too. That's a nice debate for a lot of people. Yep.
Yeah.
But I think the Klitschko tandem and the Charlo tandem probably are above the rest. But you can give a lot of respect.
There's a couple others that we didn't even realize actually. You got one Manuel Marquez and then Rafael Marquez. You've got Roger, Floyd, and Jeff Mayweather. But I think the names that really jump off at you are Vladimir and Vitaly Klitschko. They literally had the heavyweight division in a headlock for so many years.
You're right. Yeah, I'm probably going to go Klitschko slightly, the Klitschko's. You're right, Dan. That's a good one. Charlo's right behind them. I think the Ruelas brothers after that, Marquez brothers after that. Wow, you got more brother tandems than you realize, right? The Quarry brothers were very entertaining in the 70s, but they came up just short of world level. But they were very, very entertaining fighters, and they had some nice wins on their record as well over world class guys. Oh, one more. The Spinks brothers.
Of course. Yeah, you're right. Oh, they could actually go in quite high there.
Well, Leon didn't have a prolonged championship career, but a win over Ali is a win over Ali. That's like 10 wins over 10 champions. It doesn't get much bigger than that.
Doesn't get much bigger than that. Anyway, let's get on this day. And on 15th of May, 2010, Paulie Malignaggi. I don't know how every week you've got a fight. This old, one man. Obviously isn't one of the ones that you won, but it was your fight against Amir Khan at MSG. Look, this was a quite a controversial build-up to the fight. Press conferences were heated, and there was just a big, there was a big aura around the fight. Do you remember it well?
Yeah, there was. It was. You know, I look back on these promotions like where there were a lot of trash talking, and I'm actually like, even though they were bad in the moment, I'm grateful and thankful that I had them because it made it more fun and it made me look forward to the fights more often, and it made me makes me look back and see like, wow, you know, like everybody was talking about it, you know, because when you have a genuine nice beef, like it's like people look forward to the fight and people really talk about the fight, and what I notice now that I'm older, when you're younger, you're more apt to talk. And when you fight a young fighter, he's also more apt to be a little bit more mouthy, you know? And I always had a mouthy mouth, as people know. But Amir is only 23 years old. He wasn't going to, you know, he wasn't as mature as he is now. He also was going to be mouthy at me, you know? So we ended up getting pretty mouthy at one another throughout the build-up. And it led up, and this is one of those backstories, right? It leads up to the weigh-in. And here's the backstory to the weigh-in. Again, one of those tidbits you get on the podcast, right? So the weigh-in, the fight is in New York, right? So I'm thinking, wait till I get this guy in New York, man. I'm gonna have the whole weigh-in like ready to go, you know? Like this guy's trying to be all like big shot and this and that. Wait till we get to the weigh-in. So what happens? Golden Boy Promotions, who Amir has. Unfortunately, I had a second-tier promoter at the time. Golden Boy Promotions runs the show, and they make the weigh-in a private event at a hotel. You cannot get into it. So now my people cannot get into the hotel for the weigh-in. So what happens? I go to the weigh-in, and what do I find? I find an entire like jam-packed room full of Amir's people. You know, like, so it's all like Amir chants. It's just going crazy. And I was so angry because I'm like, you didn't let my people in, but this guy's got a whole ballroom full of people. So I was already in a bad mood. It was already a tense promotion, right? So I'm already now. I walk into the weigh-in and I'm in a bad mood because now I'm seeing this, right? And then we have the weigh-in. It was probably the fight where I struggled the most to make weight. It was my last fight at 140 pounds. Actually, probably that whole previous year I was struggling a lot because with the Juan Diaz fights I also struggled a lot. So I remember I was in a bad mood making weight. Now I'm in an even worse mood that this guy's got his people here and I'm in my own home city. I don't have anybody here. And all of a sudden, what happens? We weigh in and we got to do the stare down. In the stare down, we're like face to face. It's getting crazy. And Amir shoves me and all hell breaks loose, right? And we end up in the stage goes down, like I remember like it was a whole brawl that happens. They had to break it all up, and it was just crazy. And I was so angry. And I remember then how to go to the HBO fighter meetings afterwards, right? And when I went to the HBO fighter meetings, Max Kellerman tells me, you know, he said you put your hand on his neck. And I was like, absolutely not. I didn't put my hand on his neck. He just shoved me. He started this whole thing, you know? And it was like a child, you know? Like, oh, you did it. No, I did it. When I look back at the video, Amir actually did wind up with a hand on his neck. It wasn't from me, though. Eric Gomez, who was at Golden Boy, was trying to separate us because none of us would step back. And in trying to separate us, he's trying to grab his own fighter, which is Amir. But he grabs Amir by the throat. so Amir probably thinks it's me putting my hand on his throat, and he shoves me right away. Because if you look at that video, that Wayne video, you'll actually notice the instant Eric's hand goes on Amir's throat, Amir shoves me really hard. And then that's it. All hell breaks loose. The stage kind of goes down, and it's all melee from there. So, obviously, that didn't have to happen if Eric just stepped between us instead of grabbing the guy by the throat, you know? So that all triggered into the fight. The fight itself wasn't very good for me. Amir's world class, but also stylistically, it's a nightmare for me. I was always a jabber who fought at range and controlled the range. But with a guy who was like Amir, who was actually the only guy I ever fought that was faster than me, then he had more range than me, and he fought at distance as well. It was very, very, very difficult, and I would have to try to press him. I told myself, if I can't get to box him, I'm going to try to press him like I fought in the Cotto fight and just take him to a place where he's never been before, just like Cotto took me, right? But every time I got close, I remember Amir did a really smart thing. He would either hold me or push my head down constantly, you know? And I'm getting worn out trying to chase him down, walking into shots. And every time I get close, he does what he does to me. And so the Smolder breaks us, and then I got to start all over again to try to track him down. And he's got great legs at that age, you know? So it was a really uphill battle constantly. And eventually, you know, it just led to my demise. But I remember in the Lamont Peterson fight when Amir lost points for holding and pushing the head down. And I remember thinking to myself, all right, you got a referee who was enforcing it a little bit, you know, because Amir was never really much of an inside fighter. He stands too straight up. So what he does is he tries to force the fight on the outside, which is kind of like in a different method, kind of was always what I did too. I was not really much of an inside fighter. I'd maybe catch and shoot a little bit and try to bump you up on my shoulder. But other than that, I wouldn't really try to stay on the inside too long. And Amir was kind of like that too. And I tried to use his advantages. And obviously it worked brilliantly for him in that fight for me. And it really, really caused me to have to kind of reassess my career at the time. A lot changed that year for me. But luckily, I was able to turn it around a couple of years later and beat Zinchenko for the world title.
Would you say it's the fastest hand you ever faced in the ring?
Yeah, the fastest opponent I ever faced in the ring, Amir Khan. Absolutely, absolutely. He was just, I mean, a 23-year-old Amir was like lightning, man. I mean, it was just like, it was like, I felt like, is this guy even close? Because he wasn't a big puncher, right? But he was wearing me out, and plus the making the weight had drained me to begin with. So I'm like, is this guy even punching me, or is he just shooting his gloves at me? I felt like, I don't know if you're old enough, Dan, if you ever played the video game Street Fighter when you were a kid. Street Fighter 2. So Street Fighter. See, I don't know how outdated I am if every generation knows these games. In Street Fighter 2, I felt like I was fighting Dalsim in Street Fighter.
Okay.
Honestly, I told people, I'm like, yo, I felt like I was fighting Dalsim in Street Fighter when I fought this guy, because he's got these long arms, he's long and lanky, and he reaches you with them, and he's fast as hell. So I was like, I the best way I could describe it when people ask me, like, I felt like I was fighting Dalsim. That's it. You know? So that was that's the story. That's the kind of the backstory with me and Amir and the weigh-in and all that other stuff. But all in all, looking back, especially me and Amir are really cool now. You know, I still have fond memories of the crazy promotions. Me and Cotto was a crazy one. A lot of trash talking. Me and Amir, me and Broner. Me and Juan Diaz with the whole robbery and talking about those were, you know, when I look back, it made the build-up more fun. And it made training more worthwhile. You definitely had one of the most
fruitful careers in boxing. It really is, you know, like when you look at it properly, the vast majority of fighters can only dream of achieving what you achieved and having all the moments. And obviously it helps when you got a bit of a big mouth as well.
Yeah, of course.
Well, that's all we have time for today. As always, remember to like, comment, subscribe, all of that. Big fights coming up soon. Let us know if you're agreeing with us in the predictions. Who do you think is going to win these upcoming fights? And we will see you next week. Yes, people, I am Savage Dan.
I'm Paulie Malignaggi.
You are watching Mouthpiece, the official boxing podcast.
We are two of the most knowledgeable, two of the most charismatic, biggest personality guys in boxing, and we are two of the coolest cats talking about the sport today.